when I read, like, for example, a Scotist, and they're making a certain argument for one of their positions against what Thomists believe, I feel genuinely challenged. Or like a Suarezian against something I believe. I actually feel genuinely challenged. And it's genuinely difficult, actually, to sit there and to consider what they've said, even against some of my most deeply held beliefs. For example, the whole disputes between Catholic schools and the development doctrine, or certain disputes around the necessity of the filioque to distinguish the Son from the Spirit. Those things, very strongly held beliefs that I have, genuinely challenged actually by some of the arguments they give. They're very good arguments, but when I read scholastic Protestants, and as somebody who appreciates actually I actually do appreciate some of what they do. I appreciate, for example, um, I had a lot of help from them when it came to uh, the filioque from Scripture, and I thought that their focus on Scripture ends up being helpful at a lot of different points. And also some of their sometimes, like Petrus von Maastricht, their focus on devotional theology as well. They're focusing on homiletical practice. They're focusing on a lot of different issues. It's very helpful. But when it comes in terms of theological argumentation, definitions, consistent definitions, definitions that are real definitions, somebody who is trained, for example, in Aristotle's logical works to be able to make a proper definition and to properly argue and to make proper distinctions that are able to, when you read the fathers, be able to go in there and say, okay, this is where he stands on this part of the distinction. This is why he doesn't oppose us. And this is where that one stands on that part of the distinction. That's why he doesn't oppose us. We can look at the context. It's actually proper to read it this way. It's just not there. It's just not there. The level of precision and discipline when I read Protestant scholastics, sad to say, often just isn't there. I've been reading through, and let me see if I this the Synopsis Purioris, the Synopsis of Pure Theology. This was written after what's called the Synod of Dort, is by some Dutch theologians. In order to express the sort of general teaching. It's kind of like Synod of Dort. It's clownish, but it's kind of like a ecumenical council, if you want to put it like that, a reformed ecumenical council. And I don't mean clownish as in that what they were doing was clownish, but like kind of clownish by calling it an ecumenical council, because Protestants don't believe in ecumenical councils, properly speaking, which I can explain later. So the Synopsis Purioris was written in this sort of high scholastic age of Protestantism. And eventually I'm actually going to do a review of this. Davenant prints it right now, and they were kind enough to send me a review copy. And I wanted to make sure it's a good review. I don't want to kind of just, stand in front of the camera for 5 minutes and tell you guys, oh, this is a good book. And I've read a few disputations from it or whatever. So reading through it, I read the sort of charges that they give against Roman Catholic thought. And often they're just not defining their terms. They're equivocating. They're playing fast and loose. They're not distinguishing what they mean. And unfortunately, it's a lot of times, and I say this not to be a jerk or anything like that. I say this because it's true. I mean, it's not real scholasticism. This is nothing like what St. Thomas or St. Bonaventure or Alexander of Hales or any of those of that era, the golden age of scholasticism, or even we can think of like Capriolus and those of that age of scholasticism. It's nowhere near what they were doing. And it's really, really, really frustrating to read some of this stuff. I'm planning on doing a series on John Davenant's, who was a English bishop, actually was at the Synod of Dort as well. But he was an English bishop he wrote this famous 2-volume work against the papists on justification. And I'm reviewing his section on merit. I did a paper on it, but now I'm going to be doing a video series. And reading his stuff on condign merit, it just makes me want to put my head through the wall. Because our distinctions are perfectly holding together. And Davenant, unfortunately, is treating what needs to be treated with a scalpel, with a meat cleaver. And this leads him to say things like, well, St. Thomas doesn't believe in condign merit because he's defining condign merit in a very sloppy way, which is a remution due to strict justice, which is not how the medievals or the contemporary Roman Catholics of his day were at all defining it. And then he's quoting chapters from Bellarmine, which in the chapters from Bellarmine, if you go back and look and read it, Bellarmine's making these distinctions. So it's really, really just frustrating. And I just would have hoped that if I really don't know what it is. I don't want to say he's dishonest. I mean, it's possible that he's being dishonest. And I get this from Turretin. I really do think Turretin was dishonest. I get this from the Synopsis Purioris. I get this from these Protestant scholastic authors that I'm reading. And they're quoting sections when you go back and look. They're providing these distinctions that they're just kind of glossing over with a meat cleaver. It's not real scholasticism. It's hard to say. And it's frustrating. I mean, I'm not saying this because I want them to fail. I would like them to provide good, difficult, challenging stuff for me to read, to be able to move forward the science of sacred theology. I'd love that. And I know of a lot of contemporary Protestant scholastic followers who are doing stuff like that. I'm friends with a lot of them, and I respect a lot of them. But the classical responses, especially to Bellarmine, and to the Roman Catholics just aren't good. They aren't good. They aren't scholastic. This would, I mean, a sort of 14-year-old Jesuit student at Salamanca would be able to provide a better refutation than some of these. It's embarrassing sometimes. And it's extremely frustrating to me reading this and then interacting with their modern day disciples who are parroting a lot of the same arguments. And in parroting a lot of the same arguments, they're just perpetuating these false understandings of the teaching of the church. And really, in some cases, and this is going to be a controversial take, in some cases, the positions that they take on some of these issues, I think it's a few actually areas in justification where it's like this. In some of those issues, they would actually be within the scope of Roman Catholic theology. It's crazy. I mean, they would be like they could have a kind of school of their own. I mean, I think some of the Reformed authors are on merit would possibly like jive with a sort of scotistic view of merit, or maybe even a little bit higher than that. So some of their positions actually could be held within Roman Catholic schools. There's nothing against dogma or any teaching of the church in them. They can absolutely be held within Roman Catholic schools. And if this was recognized, I would have wished that there would have been a lot more camaraderie, a lot more mutual respect, and a lot less of this just sort of polemical nonsense that was being pushed. I know there was some on the Roman Catholic side doing this as well. So I'm not saying that we were completely innocent when it comes to this at all. I'm not saying we were innocent at all. But our scholastics, besides that, our scholastics were scholastics. They were good scholastics. They were scholastics this entire time. I don't know how true we can say of it, like Gerhard or Chemnitz or the writers of the Synopsis Purioris or Turretin or Davenant or any of these other guys. I don't know how much we can say that these guys were scholastics. They look nothing like the centuries of the schoolmen before them.